Yeah.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Do It Live. For my undisclosed location, I'm Bill Woodcock.
And I'm James Howard, also in an undisclosed location.
But not the same location, because that way they won't be able to track us down so easily. So for those of you who are new to our humble broadcast, we bring to you a series of issues that are based on current events and offer our opinions. Our opinions are solely our own, not any of any organization, any affiliation, any employer, or for any other purpose other than this is just what we think. And any similarity to conventional wisdom is purely coincidental. So with that in mind, we want to thank those of you who are joining us live on YouTube. And we're very happy that you're joining us. And of course, this broadcast will continue to be archived on YouTube for all eternity until the sun comes and engulfs our solar system, or until we get tired of this, whichever comes first. So with that in mind, off to the races and our first issue. And so, Jamie, we have times they are a changing, and times they are a little bit bizarre in our new year 2017. One of the things that we're seeing as we're getting ready for a total Republican power takeover of power in the federal government is kind of a conservative-based response to what some of the to Republican thinking. And that is states and even localities taking some of the initiative and not really superseding, but taking back a little bit of power from the federal government. And case in point, not all of those efforts have been successful. Case in point, we have the North Carolina bill in HB2, which was attempted to have been repealed this week with the new Democratic governor. That repeal option failed. But HB2, for those of you who are not aware, is the law that requires people to use the restrooms of their gender of birth, not of their gender of identity, which, of course, this raised a huge uproar in the LGBT community, caused a lot of business to leave the state of North Carolina, and flew in the face of gender equality and gender identity equality. So interested in your thoughts on what I see as a very interesting and concerning trend.
So I think that there's very little that can be said about HB2 that hasn't already been said. I mean, it's not very good. It's never going to be good. I don't think anyone should be surprised that the legislature backed away from their commitment to repeal it. What I find remarkable about HB2 is one particular change that was just announced recently. This was after, when it first happened, the NCAA made some noises, and a lot of other organizations made announcements about how they would not be expanding businesses they've been planning to expand in North Carolina and so forth. But even after all that, even after the election in November, when this was now out of the news essentially, a large conference, I believe it's the National Historians Conference, and I actually don't know what the name of the organization is, announced that they would be moving their annual conference from Raleigh to Baltimore. Now, of course, as a Maryland resident, I'm, of course, always happy to poach business from another state. And that brings us new business and brings us more money here because we didn't make a foolish decision. What I think is interesting about this in aggregate, and something I've been thought I've been playing for years, is you often see local jurisdictions making bad decisions that can only hurt them in the long term. I think one of the classic examples is when my hometown was pushing that they shouldn't teach evolution in the schools. I mean, this was in the 2006. I mean, this is like, you think people are civilized by now, but they're not. and trying to trying to stop teaching evolution in schools, which will only hurt the kids in those schools. And these are schools which need all the help they can get. If we're all of a sudden setting these schools up so that a high school diploma from one of these jurisdictions isn't worth the paper it's printed on, how are these kids ever going to be able to find jobs or go to college or ever make anything better for themselves? And we see this sort of thing happening quite frequently, whether it's other jurisdictions shooting themselves in the foot with abstinence-only education. Recently, Colorado, I forget if it's Denver or Colorado, 4 or 5 years ago, began a comprehensive plan to properly teach sex education. And the number of unwanted teen pregnancies dropped through the floor. Everyone's always like, if we teach these kids how to do it, then they'll do it. And yeah, maybe, but now they'll do it right, and things will go much better for everyone involved. It reduces cost to everyone. It reduces risk for these kids. It reduces everything. This is an ongoing thread, and something that Republicans do all the time. And that's why I think we really need to be worried about some of these smaller jurisdictions, which have been traditionally led by Republicans like forever. And now that we have the country essentially run by Republicans for the first time in 15 years or so, these sorts of bad decisions are gonna be done at the national level now. For instance, building a wall is just an awful idea, and here we are committing to it and now paying for it ourselves.
You may want to, at the risk of having to give up one of your collection of keys to cities and other jurisdictions, name your hometown.
Oh, no. Excuse me. So I grew up in I don't think I have a key there. I don't think I'm much welcome there these days.
But is there a legal issue that we should know about, or perhaps should not know about?
Yeah, I know what's right and wrong, and they don't. You should. I'll tell that story a different day. But so I grew up kind of all over Southwest Ohio, but in particular, I'm talking about Hamilton, Ohio, where I lived from about the time I was 10, it must be 11 to 18.
All over it. I am picturing this Bruce Springsteen-esque upraising on the shores of Jersey, where you sat there with whatever, like probably an abandoned bridge somewhere in Southwest Ohio, and you sat there on the hood of your car, popping a knee high and just swilling it down with your companion of choice. Yeah, I'm just picturing southwestern Ohio rebellion and wondering what that looks like.
No, it's not really. Well, actually, what I tell people is that my father was living the lyrics to WKRP, so we moved around a lot. Moving from station to station, literally, because he was a newsman. So, we were, there's this little town called Springfield, which is about halfway between Dayton and Columbus. There's a little town outside of there called Cedarville. And then up further north in Ohio, a town called Bellefontaine. There's also a Baltimore in Ohio, too. We never lived there. And a little bit of time in Cincinnati, and then kind of finishing up in Hamilton and spending a lot of time in Middletown.
Well, so it's interesting, and you see, we bring this up, and my point is with this is that this is other than to capture the essence of Southwest Ohio rebellion.
Oh, we don't need that.
That this is Middle America, and I think that sometimes, and it's a valid criticism to an extent that we folks on the coasts don't quite get what Middle America is thinking. A lot of North Carolina is, I would consider it, Middle America. It's not as urbanized or even as suburbanized a state as some may think it is. But that is still no excuse. And, one of the things that happened in this election cycle was kind of, I believe, a vilification of coastal values. And not a vilification and a validation that the rural, country traditional values, whatever traditional values mean, that those had been forgotten, and those had been forgotten for the sake of otherness, for the sake of, those people, whoever those people might be. And in the case of something like HB2, where the NCAA, the NBA, a number of major corporations decided not to bring their business and high-profile events to North Carolina, that is a statement, that otherness is okay. There is nothing wrong with being other. It may not be your personal preference. It may not be your personal values, but it has validity. And to claim that it doesn't have validity is, I believe, shutting off your brain to an alternative point of view and not being as open-minded as perhaps you say you are.
Well, I think that you've really hit on something with the discussion of otherness, because I think otherness means well, let me ask this, Bill. What does otherness mean to you?
Pardon me, I had to go off camera for a second. I was getting starting to schwitz a little bit. But to me, otherness means tolerance. It means open-mindedness. It means with my experience set and skill set and who I am, I cannot feel the plight or the experiences of another person. I may not even be able, I can't feel that, but
Bill, I'm going to cut you off now.
Open to experiencing it.
I'm cutting you off. You've missed the point of my question.
No, I didn't.
But when
making me schwitz again.
When I ask you about otherness, let's talk about transgender.
You ask me what it means to me, and then you tell me it's the wrong answer. You make no sense.
Yeah, it's okay. It's an elite thing.
It apparently is in Southwest Ohio. Who is the songmeister of Southwest Ohio? Who is the Jackson Brown of Southwest Ohio? Is there one? Is it Jerry Springer?
I love Jerry Springer.
I figured you would. Anyway, proceed.
But let's talk about the specific case in North Carolina. Let's talk about transgendered individuals. I mean, let me ask the question this way. When was the last time you encountered someone who was transgendered, Bill?
Probably, you mean one-on-one? Yeah. Probably about 3 or 4 months ago.
Okay. So here's the funny thing, right? Using data, which we know is skewed low because people are not willing usually to answer quiz data, we're looking at something about maybe 0.5% of people in the United States are openly or willing to admit to being transgender in a secret survey. Now, why that's really interesting is people are like, why should we accommodate a group that is so small, right, as a percentage of the population? But let's talk about what otherness really means. We still have a football stadium in these schools, and people are far more likely to be transgendered than they are to be professional football players. I mean, that's just not a thing that's ever going to happen for most people. And that's where we suddenly become this point where we're saying, well, why are we spending resources on such a small group of people when we're spending far more resources on much, much smaller groups? And I think that this needs to be, kind of, when we talk about otherness, we need to realize how common the other is.
Well, and leave it to someone without sports to almost make a perfect analogy. I think if I may correct you, the percentage of people who are and my kids' coaching experience reminds me that something like 0.003% of high school students who play football become professional football players.
Yeah.
So that is, not 1 in every 100. That is 3 in every 100,000.
Yeah.
You put on a chin strap in high school sometime, make it into the NFL. So that is an extremely small percentage. And I would say, indeed, to your point, that the percentage of transgendered individuals is much greater than that in our society. And let me draw that example out and talk about another issue that we were going to talk about anyway, but it happens to hit a little bit closer to home. and that is this issue of illegal immigration. You mentioned, before, I mean, the case of transgender individuals, or for that matter, professional football players. Anybody, any individual, no matter what their color, creed, race, preference, when they go to church, if they go to church, whatever, we all look the same. There's precious little genetic deviation in Homo sapiens. However, there is a thing going on, and those of you who can see behind me, notice my posters of San Francisco and New York City, two great world cities that have embraced the concept of sanctuary cities. And they're currently in the place where Jamie and I live, Howard County, Maryland. There is currently a bill in the local legislature to make Howard County a sanctuary jurisdiction. And what a sanctuary jurisdiction means is that an employee of that jurisdiction cannot question a resident who they come in contact with as to what is their immigration status. That's all it means, plain and simple. This sort of legislation, again, talking to your definition of otherness, Jamie, as a middle-aged Caucasian born in USA guy, it does not personally affect me. And I can understand a lot of people who may be against something like this because they see it as being unnecessary. But what this does mean is this enables any resident of a jurisdiction to feel and to behave and to be able to act the same as anyone else. This means that a kid who is abused in school because their parents are illegal immigrants, their parents can go seek out assistance from the school system for that child because they don't have to be asked about their immigration status. Same thing for people needing police protection or assistance, even in getting a library card or things of that nature. I've heard a lot of anecdotal stories about where folks who are illegal immigrants are afraid. It doesn't mean that illegal immigrants can't be deported. It doesn't mean that the federal government can't come in and enforce immigration laws. Immigration laws are fully in effect. This is a way where I see where, again, that concept of otherness, an illegal immigrant doesn't look any different, may not look any different than you or I. And so, who are we? And when I mean society, any judge of who can access services from our local government or not.
Yeah, so I mean, I want to first echo what you said, so we're going to have this legislation coming up here in Howard County, and I'll be testifying in favor of it. And I'm thinking about how I'm going to phrase that. And one of the things that keeps striking me is, I'm about the whitest guy on earth. I mean,
yeah, you are.
I'm so white. The county and I have the same name. My family's been in Maryland and Virginia so long I can trace it back to before the war. The Civil War, the English Civil War.
I'll notice that now you're running away from your rebellion.
I did this once. I traced my family back. They were in Virginia and Maryland and North Carolina. In some cases, as early as like 1660, I think. I don't have the numbers with me right now, but this is how. When I was thinking about this, I'm like, do I have anybody in my family who came to this country? Another fact, everybody was undocumented then. It's like, no, my family's been here for hundreds of years. So this doesn't hurt me. It doesn't affect me. This is not my issue. But this is the right thing to do. And it's the right thing to do for a lot of reasons, and one of which is the general public safety. One of the huge problems we have, and this is happening even here in Howard County, where we'll have someone who's undocumented, who maybe was involved, who was the victim of a mugging. They don't have the ability to call the police if they are concerned that the immigration question comes up, because once the immigration question comes up, it has to be reported to the federal government and action taken. We also need to go further here in Howard County. For instance, one of the problems we have in Howard County is especially Hispanics are very frequently attacked. This isn't just true in Howard County, but this does happen here, because there's people expect them to be carrying large amounts of cash because they fall into the group we call the unbanked. We have people who, because they are undocumented, can't get a driver's license, can't get a social security number, can't go get a bank account. This is a huge problem we have here, and I even know some people who are citizens, but they are of Hispanic descent and have been attacked here in Howard County because of this. Friends of yours too, Bill. I mean, I can think of. This is a huge problem, and this is a place where Howard County and Maryland can take positive steps by allowing for IDs to be issued to these people to get them into the system for their own safety and for the safety of everyone.
Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't agree more, and you know, because we had talked about this. I mean, you know, I thought about this for about 10 days. You know, about, you know, how I felt about it, and eventually I came to the opinion where I needed to see how people who this would affect are thinking about. Did you just drink wine?
I am drinking wine.
That is so inappropriate. I can't even. I can't
literally
begin to describe how inappropriate. And when we're talking about cultural elitism, you're sitting here drinking a nice Pinot.
No, it's a Malbec.
Oh, well then.
Like literally, we got people over it. I was having dinner.
That is
I gotta go do a line. I'll be back in half an hour.
So at any point, your face is frozen right now. But at any rate, you know, the opposition to this is that we're going to have this influx of thousands upon thousands of illegal immigrants coming into Howard County, and they're going to rape, murder, pillage, destroy. Kind of a surprise I have for a number of people in Howard County who, you know, generally on religious reasons, a lot of people in Howard County, you know, follow religions that say, you know, treat foreigners as natives of your own land, and it's kind of interesting to see that violated. But you know, illegal immigrants are here. They are here. They're not going anywhere. Plus, any recent murder or heinous violent act, and I'm sure that 5 minutes after this broadcast is over, somebody's going to crow, no, you forgot about this. I don't care. But the 2 shootings that have happened so far this year in Howard County have not happened involving any illegal immigrants. I can think of at least 2 murders 3.5 years ago in Howard County that did not happen because of any illegal immigrants. I can think of no end of other violent acts in Howard County. You know, at the Columbia Mall shooting did not involve illegal immigrants. So we natives of Howard County and the people who are our friends, because many of those incidents did involve people from other jurisdictions coming in, we have no problem committing heinous violent acts upon each other. You know, we don't need illegal immigrants to show us how to do it.
Well, the one that was last night was actually just a couple blocks from here, and that appeared to be from my undisclosed location, which we've rapidly narrowed down where undisclosed locations are.
Right.
Also, I'm pretty sure everyone recognizes this is my basement. So
I thought the collection of keys to cities was right off camera. I thought you were going to tease that for a future, but
okay. But the you know, and you're right, and we have we don't have a lot of violent crime in Howard County. When we do, it tends to be domestic violence. Last night's incident notwithstanding, it was probably, I won't speculate because this isn't Fox. But when we don't have, and that's the overwhelming majority of what violent crime actually is. It's domestic violence. I mean, that's what it is. It's horrible. People are just terrible to each other all the time. I think that there's nothing we're going to do to change it. And it doesn't matter if you're white or Hispanic or black or Asian. I mean, people are terrible to each other. And when we have the ability to sit down and say together, let's try to do the right thing, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we do that. That's what makes us better people. I mean, we're supposed to be better people here, Bill. Whether that's because we're Americans or liberals or whatever it is that's defining us as better people today, it's because we're better people that we have to take these steps to make people's lives better.
I think we're better people. I like what you said about that we're Americans, and we also like to think that we progress. And by progress, I do not mean progressive. I mean that we move forward in society. I mean, let's not forget that 150, 160 years ago, there was still slavery. A little bit more than 100 years ago, there was not the right to vote for women. 60 years ago, there were still Jim Crow laws and other very horrible things. 15, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, AIDS was demonized and there was horrible violence against homosexuals and folks of other gender identities. Many of those things still continue, but we like to think that we progress as a society, that we move forward as a society. But, and this will be the last thing I say about this, when we're talking about progressing in society, my family didn't see it because we came over on the steamship to Baltimore, but many, many millions of families saw it, especially towards the end of the 19th century, that big green copper lady standing in New York, in the river in New York, and those things about give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, etc. And those were very valuable words. And the folks who came over 130 years ago built a lot of modern America. It would be interesting if indeed, we gave this generation of immigrants an opportunity to participate in similarly shaping this country. So, Jamie,
follow up on that before because I think that's a very important point, which is the value that these people do contribute to our society. When I remember when Chase was probably about 18 months old, we were at we went down to the National Archives in D.C. and there was some sort of, this was one of the early Tea Party. This would have been about 6 years ago. So one of the early Tea Party rallies. Before they really kind of coalesced, or at the beginning of that coalescence, we're in town, and everyone's there to worship the Constitution, as these Tea Partiers like to claim they do. So I'm always on, as you know, Bill. And I picked up Chase, and we were like, I don't want to see the beginning of this thing. Let's go look at the signature page. And I pointed out one very important signature on that page, and that was the signature of Alexander Hamilton. And I said to him, just remember, Chase, Alexander Hamilton was like every other great American, an illegal immigrant. Because he was.
Indeed. So, Jamie, have you made, I mean, we're almost at the end of our time, but I do have to briefly, Schwitzen again.
What?
I'm about to have a nosebleed, I think. But I don't, because you're stressing me out with your alcohol consumption on camera. So,
water.
I do need to touch upon this very, sure. I do need to touch upon this subject. Have you made any New Year's resolutions, Jamie?
No, I have not.
Well, you know what? That is maybe the most right thing I have heard from you this whole half hour, because New Year's resolutions, I'm sorry, are ridiculous. And for anybody who's out there who's made a New Year's resolution, I thank you, and I certainly wish you all the best of luck in sticking with them. but I will offer you just a little food for thought. A little, maybe, not an appetizer, but like kind of like a nice slice or two of pot roast for thought, which is that you need to realize that, you can make a resolution any day of the year. So there's nothing special about January 1st to decide to get into that gym or decide to be nicer to your coworkers or decide to join an organization or decide to volunteer or decide to go get a puppy or to decide to do anything. You can do it. Guess when? You could do it today. You could, well, probably not because the SPCA is closed, but you could do it tomorrow. You could hit the gym, in a week. You could, do whatever you want, whenever you want. So I just want to offer that to folks out there, especially since this issue of this program was called New Year's Resolutions. You can resolve to make your resolution whenever you want. That's just amazing. And what a great country we live in, don't you think?
I think it's, first of all, I just want to clarify, I am always nice to my coworkers. I love my coworkers. I think they're fantastic people.
So I hear.
So I'm sure you do. But I also think that we're about like this close to stepping right on the whole mindfulness and intentions thing. So I'm a little worried here. But I think that you're right. What? Wait, whoa, you're
on it.
No, not yet. But when I didn't make any. Ducky made a New Year's resolution. She wants to learn how to float in the pool, but I don't view that so much as a resolution as it is a goal. And goals are fine. But whenever you have the opportunity, I will say this: I do not have a problem. I do see the issue you have with New Year's resolutions and the idea that you should always just be able to do those things whenever you want to. But I do like the idea of using the beginning of the year or whatever artificial demarcation point you want to say, let's look at the goals and see if we're setting and see if the goals we're setting and goals we're meeting those goals, because I think these are important things to do. And for Ducky, she wants to be able to float in the pool by herself before the end of the year, and I think that's fantastic. And I think she'll probably be there in another couple of months, and then she'll need something new to do. But the fact that she has observed that this is a goal and this is important to her, I think is great.
That is a very valuable goal, and as I said, I not people who make New Year's resolutions. Ducky's just a little bit smaller than you and I, if I'm not mistaken. I'm actually embarking upon a new thing next week. I am going to do yoga for the first time ever.
Oh, I'm doing Tai Chi.
That's happening on Thursday. So see, just goes to show you can do it whenever. So I appreciate this time, Dr. Howard. This has once again been a wonderful conversation. I'd like to thank again those of you who have braved through this on the YouTube, and please tell your friends and neighbors that this remains the hottest live broadcast in all of Central Maryland. And we will, how about if we do this again in 2 weeks? Jamie, how does that sound to you?
2 weeks, we're going to do it live. We've already named that episode.
What's the name? I don't know the name.
It's Menardus Westons.
I love it.
It's it's a song by Falco, and I think it's fantastic, and it's a great title for an episode.
It has already become a part of me. Well, thank you again, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Sign off, Jamie.
Bye-bye.
See ya.